A week earlier, Leo had only $10 in his pocket. Now, he was opening his own lemonade stand. Throughout my life, I've seen a lot of people start their first business, but I don't remember anyone looking as excited as Leo did. He carefully placed the last sign where it belonged. Then he took a few steps back. He smiled. "I think it's ready." "I think so too." That afternoon, people slowly began gathering around the stand. Tom was there. John was there. Warren and Carol were there too. A few of our neighbors had stopped by as well. Everyone stood there holding a cup of lemonade, congratulating Leo. Just then, Olivia smiled. "Wait, I think we should take a picture." We all gathered around the stand. Leo stood right in the middle. Olivia raised her phone. Everybody smile. Click. The picture was taken. At that moment, none of us knew that it would become much more than just a simple keepsake photo. A few days later, the sky turned dark. The rain just wouldn't stop. We had to pack up the stand for a while. Another day, a city employee walked over to the stand. "Sorry, kid. You can't sell here." Then one evening, I looked out the window. I saw Leo leaving the house on his bicycle. He knocked on the door. "Uncle Warren." Warren opened the door. "We need to talk. I need your help with something." "Come on. Let's go sit in the backyard." That summer, I thought Leo was learning how to sell lemonade. I was wrong. What he was really learning was, let me tell you a story. Leo stared at the money in his hands for a few seconds. Then he smiled at me. "I have an idea. I'm listening. I'm going to keep selling lemonade. But this time, I'm not going door to door." I looked at him curiously. "So what are you going to do?" "I'm going to build my own lemonade stand." Olivia smiled in surprise. "A real lemonade stand?" "Yep. I want people to come to me." I nodded. "I like that." Leo pulled a folded piece of paper out of his pocket. "I made a list last night. Everything I'll need." He unfolded the paper. "A table, a pitcher, paper cups, lemons, and a sign." Olivia laughed. "You've really thought this through." Leo smiled back. "Okay, but I have one condition." Leo turned to me. "What is it?" "This is your business. Your mom and I will help you, but you're the one who's going to run it." Leo nodded without even thinking. "That's exactly what I want." The next morning, the summer sun had only just begun to rise. The garage door opened. Leo stepped outside with his little list in his hand. I was pulling an old folding table out of the corner of the garage. Olivia called out from the kitchen, "I've washed the lemons. We can start whenever you're ready." The excitement on Leo's face was impossible to miss. Today, he was building his very first real business. He unfolded his list, then crossed off the first item. "Table, done." He looked at the next one, or sign. I pulled out a large white poster board from the corner of the garage. Then I set a few colored markers beside it. "Here you go. You're the designer." Leo wasted no time. He sat down on the floor, thought for a moment. Then, in big, bold letters, he wrote, "Fresh homemade lemonade." When he finished, he looked up. "So? What do you think?" Before I could answer, Olivia walked out of the kitchen. She took off her apron and looked at the sign. "I think people are going to stop just to read that." The smile on Leo's face grew even wider. He looked back at his list. "Sign, done." He crossed it off. "Next, lemons." The fresh smell of lemons had already filled the entire house. Olivia placed the large glass pitcher on the kitchen counter. "Ready?" Leo looked at me, then at his mom. He smiled. "Let's do it." Before long, the kitchen had turned into a workshop. Olivia was cutting the lemons in half. Leo was squeezing them one by one, and I was sanding the table and tightening its legs. About an hour later, everything was ready. The folding table, the glass pitcher, the paper cups, the little cash box, and the sign Leo had made with his own hands. We carefully loaded everything into the trunk of the car. Leo looked down at his list. Table, he crossed it off. Pitcher, another check. Cups, lemons, sign. When he crossed off the last item, he took a deep breath. "That's everything." I closed the trunk. "Only one thing left." Leo looked at me curiously. "What's that?" "Finding the right place." Leo smiled. "I'll find it." We got into the car, then slowly drove through the neighborhood. Leo stared out the window. carefully studying every corner. We passed the park, then the grocery store, then the bike path, and then he pointed toward the wide sidewalk at the entrance to the neighborhood. I think this is it. I pulled the car over. Leo got out. He looked around for a long moment. The sun was shining straight across the street. People were walking by. Cars were slowing down. That familiar smile appeared on his face again. This is it. This is the place. Leo lined up the last paper cup on the table. Then he hung his handmade sign across the front. He took a few steps back, looked at it for a long moment, then turned to me. I think it's ready. I smiled. I think so too. I called Olivia. Where are you? We're across from the little park at the entrance to the neighborhood. You know that corner? We're right next to it. Olivia smiled. Okay. We'll be there in 5 minutes. I hung up. Leo looked at me. Mom? Yeah. I think she has a surprise. Leo smiled, puzzled. A surprise? About 5 minutes later, a few familiar figures appeared on the other side of the street. Olivia was the first. Behind her came Tom, John, Warren, Carol, and a few of our neighbors. The moment Leo saw them, his eyes lit up. Everyone came. Tom walked straight over to the stand and pulled a $2 bill out of his pocket. I'd like to be your first customer. Laughing, Leo filled the first cup. You're going to have to wait in line. Tom burst out laughing. Now that's a real businessman talking. John stepped forward and held out $2. I'll have one too. Carol bought 2 cups. She handed one to Warren. Then Olivia stepped into line as well. I'm a customer too. Leo shook his head with a grin. No discounts. Everyone laughed. I couldn't help laughing too. For a moment, it didn't feel like Leo was selling lemonade. It felt like everyone had come to support his dream. Just then, Olivia raised her phone. Wait, let's make this one last forever. We all gathered around the stand. Leo stood right in the middle. Tom put an arm around his shoulder. Carol leaned over and hugged him. John raised his cup of lemonade. Warren stood quietly in the back with his usual calm smile. I stepped in beside them. Olivia lifted her phone. Ready? Everybody smile. Click. The picture was taken. At that moment, none of us knew that it would become much more than just a simple keepsake photo. For the next few days, everything went exactly the way Leo had imagined. People from the neighborhood stopped by, bought a cup of lemonade, then continued on their way. Every evening, Leo came home a little happier than the day before. Then, one morning, dark clouds covered the sky. At first, a light rain began to fall. Then, it kept raining for hours. The next day was the same, and the day after that. The kind of days when nobody even thought about buying an ice-cold lemonade. We had no choice but to pack up the stand for a while. A few days later, the rain finally stopped. The next morning, Leo got up early once again. He filled the glass pitcher, added fresh ice, prepared the stand, just like always, then returned to the exact same corner. This time, the sky was clear. Leo took a deep breath. Good, today's going to be better. But it wasn't. People kept walking past. Some looked at the sign, then simply kept going. An hour passed, then another. That day, Leo sold only 2 cups of lemonade. When we got home that evening, he couldn't hide the disappointment on his face. He sat down at the kitchen table. I don't get it. Olivia and I listened quietly. My lemonade is exactly the same. I actually think it tastes even better now. So why doesn't anyone want it anymore? Olivia smiled softly. I smiled too, but neither of us answered. Leo lowered his head. He sat there quietly for a long moment, then slowly stood up. I know someone who might have the answer. He grabbed his bicycle and hurried out the door. He knocked. Uncle Warren. Warren opened the door. We need to talk. I need your help with something. Come on, let's go sit in the backyard. They sat down at their usual table. Carol walked out of the house carrying 2 glasses of iced tea. Enjoy your conversation, she said with a smile. Then she quietly went back inside. Warren leaned back in his chair. So, tell me what's going on. Leo took a deep breath. He told him everything about the lemonade stand, the excitement of opening day, the first customers, the rain, and how business had almost completely stopped after the weather changed. When he finished, neither of them spoke for a few seconds. Warren never took his eyes off Leo. So, what do you think changed? Leo shrugged. I don't know. The lemonade is the same. The recipe is the same. The stand is the same. I'm the same. The people changed. A faint smile appeared on Warren's face. Did they? Leo hesitated. He wasn't sure how to answer. Warren picked up his glass, took a sip, then set it back down. Why do you think I'm drinking this iced tea right now? Leo shook his head. I don't know. Because I was thirsty. A brief silence followed. Warren continued. So, I didn't buy iced tea. I bought a solution to my thirst. Leo listened carefully. Warren pointed toward the backyard. If you offered me an ice-cold lemonade here in the middle of winter, I'd probably say no. But if it were 95 degrees outside today, I might drink too. Leo's expression slowly began to change. Warren noticed. I'm not asking if you understand. I just want you to think about one thing. Are people the thirstiest? Leo didn't answer. He thought about it for a while, then slowly shook his head. I don't know. Warren smiled. That's exactly what you need to find out. On the way home, Leo rode his bicycle much more slowly this time. He wasn't in a hurry. Warren's last question kept echoing in his mind. When are people the thirstiest? He barely spoke during dinner. Olivia and I noticed, but neither of us asked him anything. That night, before going to bed, he sat down at his desk, placed a blank sheet of paper in front of him, picked up a pencil, and wrote across the top of the page in large letters, when are people the thirstiest? For a while, he couldn't write anything. He simply twirled the pencil between his fingers. Then he wrote his first answer. After playing sports, he thought for a moment, then added another, while playing at the park. After riding a bike, while working in the yard, the page slowly began to fill. The more Leo wrote, the more ideas came to him. After a while, he stopped, looked at everything he had written, then quietly whispered to himself, So, it's not really about the lemonade. The next morning, he left the house carrying his list. That day, instead of trying to sell lemonade, he watched people. He sat in the park, waited beside the bike path, walked past the basketball court. He was trying to figure out who wanted something to drink and when. That day, he barely sold anything, but when he got home, there were far more notes on his paper than there had been the day before. The next day, Leo left the house a little later than usual. He wasn't in a hurry. He read through his list a few more times, then climbed onto his bicycle. But this time, he didn't go back to his usual corner. First, he rode slowly through the neighborhood. He passed the park. There were plenty of children, but none of them had a drink in their hands. He kept going. Then he reached the bike path. People were constantly riding by. No one looked like they were about to stop. He made a small note on his list. The bike path isn't a good spot. He rode a little farther. This time, he stopped in front of a small basketball court. 6 or 7 teenagers were playing a game. He stood there quietly and watched. No one left the court. Leo wrote another note. Not while the game is going on. Just as he was about to get back on his bike, the game ended. One of the boys tossed the basketball aside. Another wiped the sweat from his forehead with his shirt. Then one of them shouted, Anybody bring any water? Another shook his head. I wish. Leo froze. His eyes slowly widened. He quickly wrote another note in his notebook. Be ready after the game ends. At that moment, Warren's voice echoed in his mind once again. People don't buy lemonade. They buy a reason for buying it. Leo looked back toward the basketball court, then smiled to himself. The next day, he left the house a little later again. This time, he set up his stand near the basketball court, but instead of opening right away, he waited. The first whistle blew. The game began. About 40 minutes later, the game ended. The players slowly walked off the court. Some wiped the sweat from their faces. Others sat down on a nearby bench trying to catch their breath. One of them noticed the stand. Hey, lemonade. 3 or 4 of them walked over. I'll take one. Me too. Is it cold? Leo smiled. I made it fresh this morning. The first boy finished his cup in one long drink. Perfect timing. Another reached into his pocket for his money. A third called out to his friend, You should get one too. About 10 minutes later, half the pitcher was gone. Leo quietly put the lid back on it. He took out his notebook, made another small note, then got back on his bicycle. From that day on, every morning Leo asked himself the same question. Where are people going to be thirsty today? Once he found the answer, that's where he took his stand. Sometimes beside the basketball court, sometimes near the exit of the baseball field, sometimes at the end of the bike trail, and on weekends, near neighborhood garage sales. He no longer picked a location at random. He watched people. He waited. Then he set up his stand. Most of the time, it didn't take long before he knew he had chosen the right place. Under the hot summer sun, empty pitchers, stacks of used paper cups, and a cash box that grew heavier every day became part of his daily routine. Sometimes, he came home with every last drop of lemonade sold. Olivia greeted him with the same smile every time. "Sold out again?" Leo nodded proudly. "Every single cup." Then they started squeezing lemons again for the next morning. One afternoon, Leo set up his stand near the entrance to the neighborhood park. Business was going well. People leaving the park stopped by, bought a cup of lemonade, then continued on their way. Just then, a city vehicle pulled up near the park. A city employee stepped out. He walked over to the stand. "Hi there, kid." Leo smiled. "Hi." The man glanced at the sign, then spoke in a calm, friendly voice. "I'm sorry, but this park is city property. You'll need a permit to sell here." Leo paused for a moment, then nodded. "I understand." He packed up his stand, loaded everything onto his bicycle. His spirits weren't crushed. By now, he had already built a system that didn't depend on any single location. The next day, he set up on a different corner. The day after that, near the bike trail. That weekend, close to a neighborhood garage sale. Leo was no longer looking for places where people happened to be. He was looking for the places and the moments when people needed him most. Over the next few weeks, he kept following the same routine. Every morning, he prepared fresh lemonade, took his stand to the place he believed made the most sense that day, and by evening, he usually came home with an empty pitcher. By then, people around the neighborhood knew him. Some waved from across the street. Others walked up before Leo even had a chance to say hello. "I'll have the usual." Leo smiled and filled another cup. As the summer went on, the cash box grew heavier. One day, while setting up his stand, he noticed another table in the distance. 2 kids about his age, selling cold drinks. The following week, he spotted another stand on a different street. Not lemonade this time, iced fruit juice. Leo simply smiled, got off his bicycle, and set up his own stand where he had planned to. Then, the final week of summer arrived. School was only a few days away. That afternoon, Leo sold his last cup of lemonade. He placed the lid back on the empty glass pitcher, folded up the table, carefully took down his sign, loaded everything onto his bicycle. This time, he wasn't in any hurry on the ride home. Together, we opened the garage, put the folding table back where it belonged. He placed the glass pitcher on the shelf. Then, he looked at the sign he had made with his own hands, smiled, and leaned it carefully against the wall. As I closed the garage door, I turned to him. "I guess you've made quite a bit of money." Leo smiled proudly. "I have." "So, what are you planning to do now?" Leo looked at me, smiled. "I think I know." That day, the decision Leo made would become the beginning of a brand new adventure. One that would change not only his life, but mine, and the lives of many of the people around us. But that's a story for the next episode.